So, here's a big question for you. Are human beings, at our core, good? Are we actually wired to be kind and cooperative, or are we all just secretly looking out for number one? It's one of the oldest questions there is, and it turns out the answer is way more complicated and a lot more interesting than you might think. Let's dive into that complexity, starting with a strange little paradox. To really get to the heart of this, we're going to look at the stories of two men. They couldn't be more different, but weirdly enough, they both share the same last name, Price. And together, they kind of represent the two extreme poles of human nature. So on one side, you have George Price. This guy was a genius biologist who literally created the mathematical equation for altruism. And he took his own work so to heart that he lived it to an extreme, giving away every single thing he owned. He actually became homeless while helping other people, and then tragically, he took his own life. Then, on the complete other end of the spectrum, you have Dan Price. You've probably heard of him, the famous CEO who went viral for his incredible fairness, paying all of his employees a $70,000 minimum salary. He built this huge public brand as a prophet of ethical capitalism, but that whole image just came crashing down when he had to resign over some really serious allegations of sexual assault. And that story about Dan Price, well, it perfectly illustrates this problem, doesn't it? The idea of creating a facade of morality to hide what's really going on behind the scenes. This gap between the person we think we see and the person who might actually be there, that's really at the center of what we're talking about today. You know, this whole paradox with the two Prices, it's not just about them. It actually reflects two giant competing stories that we've told ourselves for centuries about what human nature even is. Are we basically angels? Or are we basically apes?
The first story is what you might call Homo economicus, the selfish man. This is that classic old-school idea that humans are just fundamentally self-interested. We're always trying to get the most for ourselves in a constant war of all against all. But lately, a much more optimistic story has taken hold, Homo reciprocans, or the reciprocal person. And this view says, no, we're naturally cooperative, we're kind, we're fair, and that's how our species became so successful in the first place. So, which one is it?
Well, this is where our source material for today, the book Invisible Rivals, steps in and proposes something totally different. A third story, one that goes way beyond this simple good versus evil debate. It forces you to ask a really interesting question. What if we've been looking at this all wrong? What if the answer isn't either selfish or cooperative? What if it's both? What if competition and cooperation aren't actually opposites, but are really just two sides of the very same coin? And this brings us to the core idea of the book. Invisible rivalry. The theory is that humans evolved this incredible ability to compete inside of cooperative groups. We don't just cooperate, and we don't just compete. We often pretend to cooperate as a strategy to compete even better, to get ahead, to gain status or resources, all while hiding our true selfish intentions. In other words, as the book puts it, we didn't rid ourselves of selfishness, we just got better at hiding it. Evolution didn't just erase our selfish drives. Instead, it gave us more sophisticated tools, things like language, reputation, and social strategy to disguise them. Selfishness didn't just go away, it just went undercover.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. This sounds a little dark, maybe a little cynical, but the evidence for this kind of hidden competition is rooted deep, deep in our evolutionary past. You see, deception isn't just a human thing, it's a fundamental strategy for life itself.
And this is not some recent invention. The roots of this behavior go back hundreds of millions of years. We see it 240 million years ago in the fossil record with cancer, which is a perfect example of selfish cells cheating the cooperative system of a body. We see it millions of years ago when our primate cousins started using what's called tactical deception. And today, we humans, well, we've basically perfected the art with our complex minds and our language. Just look at how this plays out at different scales. On a cellular level, cancer is the ultimate invisible rival. It pretends to be a healthy cell so the body doesn't attack it, all while selfishly sucking up resources, a strategy that eventually kills the very system it's exploiting. Now look at a primate. A chimp might misdirect a stronger rival by pretending to look for food over there, only to sneak back and grab the prize for itself. It's the same exact logic, just playing out in different arenas. Okay, so deception is ancient. But what about early human societies? You know that romantic idea that a lot of us have, the noble savage, that before civilization came along and messed everything up, we all lived in this perfect equal harmony. Well, the actual anthropological evidence tells a much messier story. This is that popular picture, right? The nomadic egalitarian model. The idea is that our hunter-gatherer ancestors were totally fair, they lived in these small, peaceful groups, nobody hoarded anything, and everyone was free to do their own thing. It's a beautiful vision, but is it true? Well, when you actually look at the data, the story gets way more complicated. Yeah, you had groups like the Aché in Paraguay who were incredibly cooperative and shared food widely. But then you also had groups like the Calusa in ancient Florida, who were also foragers, but they had a king, nobles, slaves, and even practiced human sacrifice. Or look at the Cheyenne, where older men held all the power and sometimes subjected women to absolutely brutal punishments. The truth is, our ancestors were all over the map. Some were incredibly cooperative, and some were deeply exploitative. Look, there is no doubt our ancestors were brilliant. They created amazing cultures and technologies, like these tools, that let them spread all across the globe. But all of that sophistication, all that intelligence, it didn't get rid of our capacity for selfishness. It just gave us new and, frankly, more clever ways to act on it. So, why does any of this ancient history or biology really matter to us right now, in our world of social media, office politics, and everything else? Well, because these exact same dynamics are playing out every single day, all around us. There's this fantastic story in Plato's Republic about a shepherd named Gyges. He finds a ring that makes him totally invisible. And what's the first thing he does with this newfound power? He sneaks into the palace, kills the king, and takes over the kingdom. That ring, it represents the power to do whatever you want without any consequences, because no one can see you. And here's the big, profound insight for us today. Our incredible social intelligence, our complex language, our ability to manage our reputation, that is our ring of Gyges. It's the tool that gives us the power to make our real motives invisible to everybody else, letting us look like a good team player while we're secretly playing our own game. Now, hearing all this, it's really easy to feel a bit cynical, but that's not the point. In fact, thinking this way is actually incredibly empowering. It's a tool. Because once you understand that we all have this capacity for invisible rivalry, you can start to design better, more honest systems around it. You can see through the facades that other people put up. And maybe most importantly, you can start to be a little more honest with yourself about your own motivations. So in the end, we all have this ring of invisibility. We are all capable of being invisible rivals. The ultimate question isn't whether we're good or evil. It is knowing that we have this incredible power to hide our intentions. What are we going to choose to do with it?